Hello 10A, and I hope that you're all very well. So today I'd like to go through some mock assessment feedback for your animal description, as well as some final advice. I have sent WeChat to every single person with specific individual feedback. I've read all of your descriptions. Some of you have passed, some of you haven't. Some are better than others, but I think everybody in the class can actually improve. So please pay very careful attention to the information that I'm going to give you today, and also go back to WeChat and have a look at what I've provided you there. I do ask, well, I would suggest that you rewrite your animal description on the Panda, and you can send that through to me, and I'm happy to mark that and get back to you with some feedback just to make sure that you're going to pass. And the more you practice, the more feedback you get, the better your mark is going to be. You might as well start off level 1 for GAC, getting the highest marks possible, so that when you finish in level 3, you'll have sort of excellent high GPA and be able to go to a wonderful university. So let's go. So here, just to briefly go over the requirements. So it is an academic description of an endangered animal, an academic description. That means it is not an advertisement. You are not trying to stop them being endangered or stop pollution. It is not a speech. It is an academic description. Group your points and organize them into a logical order and complete your plan. There must be an introduction, a conclusion, and your references. Everybody except one student, thank you Jasmine, forgot to put the reference at the end. So please make sure you do that, because it's just one little extra point that you can get that could make a big difference. It must be evidence or fact-based. This means it doesn't your opinion, it's not what you think about it, it's not what you've seen or experienced, it's evidence or fact-based. The length must be 250 words or in around that. If you go a little bit under, a little bit over, that's okay depending on the content, but there were about 3 of you that only wrote 140 words. If you only give me 140 words, unfortunately you will fail. It's just too much under the final word count. So to go over academic writing, it means that we do not use first person. You can't say I'd like to introduce, now I'm going to do this, I think. There can't be I, it must be in third person. This shows that you can write in an academic way. Do not include your opinions, your ideas, or your thoughts. Even if you think the panda is cute, you do not write the panda is cute. That is your opinion. Do not use emotional language, things like cute, lovely, or it's amazing. I think almost every single one of you wrote that the panda is cute. Remember, this is a scientific academic description. We do not use the word cute. Pretend that you are a scientist or a professor. So if you think that you're writing as if you were a scientist or a professor, it will change the tone of your writing and you should get a better result that way. This is writing, not a speech. Many of you have written as if you were going to do a presentation on the giant panda. Remember, this is different to 001. We're in 002 and we're looking at academic writing, writing for how you're going to be writing when you're at university. Okay, so many of you that have done that, again, I suggest rewrite. You probably have really good content, but if you use the right tone, the academic tone, it will change your marks by at least 10%. Okay, so first person versus third person. I just wanted to clarify to make sure you understand what I mean. I think the panda is a very special animal. This is first person. You've said, I think. We can change that, have the same information, but put it into third person. So, the giant panda is a unique and well-known animal. So this is third person. There's no opinion. It is a fact. Now, I've also written the giant panda. Now, in English, we must have the before the animal. So the Arctic wolf, the beluga whale, the giant panda. But if you pluralize it, if you want to talk about 2, giant pandas is okay. So 1, the giant panda, or plural, giant pandas. Next, I'm very sad that they are endangered. Again, this is your opinion, this is your feeling. We've got academic writing, we must use third person. Instead, let's write, Unfortunately, due to loss of habitat, the giant panda is endangered. Now, using the word unfortunately actually has that same emotion as sad. This is academic writing, and this is just emotive low-level writing, okay? So again, first person versus third person. I don't want to see any eyes in your writing. Opinions versus facts. They're lovely. Instead, they have a unique appearance. It's amazing. Instead, one of the most interesting things about them is they're lazy. They spend much of their life eating and sleeping. When you're talking about animals, you've got to remember that they are not humans. Just because they behave differently doesn't mean that they're lazy. This is just how they behave, okay? Speech versus article. So many of you use the left-hand comments. Today, I would like to introduce. Next, I'll talk about. What should we do about this? Instead, today I would like to introduce would be perfectly fine as a presentation. In your article, though, it would be the giant panda, or one of the most interesting things, or located in China, the giant panda. So we go straight into it. We don't need to tell us that what we're introducing. Next, I'll talk about. You aren't going to talk about because it's not a speech. So instead we can say meanwhile, next, furthermore, or in relation to. If you go back to your books, we've got lots of signposting phrases that you could use instead of next, I'll talk about. What should we do about this? Instead, we can go into in order to prevent, it's essential that way. So different options to use in order to change the speech versus an article. Many of you seem a bit confused as to what the introduction needs to include. Also, just to comment here, with introduction, body 1, body 2, please make sure there is a whole space, a whole line between your paragraphs. This way I can see clearly that you've got introduction, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and so on and so forth. This means, again, I can give you some extra points because you have correctly formatted it and made it very, very clear where one paragraph ends and another begins. If you feel you do not have enough paper, please ask the teacher, put your hand up, and they'll be able to supply you with further paper so that you've got enough lines to leave a complete one-line gap. Okay, so here are some examples of what you could do for the introduction. The giant panda is one of the most famous endangered animals in the world. Due to their unique appearance, they have international popularity. So this introduction is just 2 sentences. And for this description, 1 sentence or 2 sentences is absolutely fine. Next one, located in the clouds, the unicorn is one of the most unique creatures on Earth. Again, this is just 1 sentence. I've not used too much information about the habitat, where I've said located in the clouds. In my first or second paragraph, I can expand on that. So I've not wasted this information, I've just referred to it. For instance, you could say located in China, the giant panda is a national treasure. And then later, when you talk about habitat, you can be more specific, explaining that it's located in the Yangtze area. Finally, another example, global warming has had many negative impacts, one of which is the increasing number of endangered animals due to loss of habitat. The ostrich is one of these affected animals. This is not true, I'm sure the ostrich is fine, but it's just an example of using a different way to introduce or to start your description. Conclusion. Generally, I would suggest that the conclusion you focus on the animal being endangered. Again, avoid using first person and avoid using opinion. For instance, while this animal is currently endangered, there is hope that we can save them from extinction. Increased dedication to prevention of deforestation, replanting of bamboo forests, and a focus on reducing pollution, it is hoped that giant panda will be here for generations to come. So just a short 2 sentences with all of the information. I've still got emotion in there, but I've not needed to use I, and I've not needed to use emotional language. Organise and plan. You do get marked on your plan. There's a couple of students, I can't remember who off the top of my head, there's maybe 2 or 3 of you that wrote a fantastic plan. I was really impressed with it. That's not good. I'm hoping that I get 25 students that write a really good plan. So use the information on your data sheet. What things go together? For instance, I would suggest that habitat and diet would go together because it depends on where someone lives as to what sort of food they can eat. Also, just a comment on emotive language. The panda doesn't like to eat bamboo. It is not their favorite food. It is what is part of their diet. So again, taking those emotions out of it, so that again, the panda is not a human. They live differently and they have different behaviors. So just be careful of that kind of language. So for example, for the panda, I might have organized it in the following way. My introduction, and you'll see I've just written intro. I don't have time to write introduction, nor do I have time to write giant panda. However, just a note that the giant panda is its full name. If you start using just panda, you could be talking about other animals, and I would have to mark you down for that. For instance, if you're talking about the Arctic fox and you start just saying fox, I will reduce your mark. So make sure that you're using the formal word for the animal. So panda equals national treasure, endangered. So in my introduction, I'll do 1 or 2 sentences using those points. Then at body 1, I've decided I want to talk about the appearance. So in the first body, I'm going to talk about the woolly fur, black and white, size and weight. Body 2, I think habitat and diet go together really well. So I'm going to talk about Yangtze China forests and their diet being bamboo. Body 3, I'm going to talk about lifestyle, that they're solitary animals, that they meet to mate, they have 2 cubs but 1 survive. And again, I'm going to develop that into probably 3, maybe 4 sentences. And finally, my conclusion, I'm going to talk about endangered and deforestation equals no habitat, suggests stop deforestation to save from extinction. So this is all you need to do for your plan. You do not write your description in the planning. It's just to get your ideas in the right order. You might, for instance, decide that you'd like to talk about this first. So you'd move this up to body 1. So just getting everything in the correct order and grouped in the correct way. Then when you're writing your description, you should continue to refer back to your plan to make sure that you're keeping on track. The problem is that our brains often think about lots of different things while we're writing, so having a plan will just keep you, as I said, on that right track. Word count. As I said, some of you only wrote 150 words, and unfortunately you would actually fail the assessment if you do that. So here's an idea of how you can actually allocate those words. So description might be quite short. I'm only writing 2 sentences, so it'll be about 25 words. My body 1, 2 and 3, I've got basically the same amount of information. So I think maybe 50, 55 to 60 words will be fine for that, and conclusion will be 50. I know this only adds up to 240, but that would be okay. And I know that there's probably going to be some extra words in there outside of this word allocation. But this makes me understand, okay, I know basically how long each of the paragraphs need to be in order for me to meet my 250 word count. Your tone. So it needs to be scientist or professor style. As I said, this is not a presentation. Avoid using rhetorical questions. Rhetorical questions are questions like, would you like less homework? It's a question that doesn't need an answer. I know the answer would be yes. Or what should we do about this? You're going to then tell them what you should do, so they don't need to answer that question. These are fantastic to use in speeches and presentations. And please make sure you keep a note of them for when you do your presentation on your endangered animal. But for writing, we need to avoid this. No exclamation marks. Again, this is not an advertisement. It's not a speech. You're not trying to convince or influence anybody about anything. So we need to keep the tone nice and professional and scientific. This is actually from your books, and if you go back through, I think it's chapter 4, there's a lot of information that is going to be helpful. I know that we've gone through it in class, but for me, I would probably have revised this before the mock assessment on Wednesday. So let's just read through this, and I want you to hear the tone. I want you to have your description in front of you and see if there's a difference that you can tell in your tone in comparison to this description. Toucans. Toucans are South American birds of the rainforest Faustus species. Their colourful plumage and oversized beaks make them instantly recognisable. So this is a short introduction, 2 short sentences. Toucans have a black body with a yellow neck and shades of blue and green around their eyes. Their beaks can grow up to 20 centimetres in length and are multicoloured. Although big, their beaks are actually quite light and similar in consistency to hard sponge. Their bright colours blend in with the dense foliage of rainforest vegetation. So we can see in the first one, we've looked at their appearance. Toucans live from Mexico to Argentina in the tropical rainforests, nesting in tree cavities. They live in flocks of about 6 birds because they are gregarious in nature. For example, if abandoned tree hollows are limited, the flock tucks in their tails and beaks and crowds into the same hole. They court each other by slapping beaks. Both parents incubate the 2 or 4 eggs which are laid each year. They take turns sitting on them. So we've got another paragraph where we've talked about habitat and their lifestyle. Finally, Indigenous people who have always lived in the rainforest consider toucans to be sacred. Toucans are not an endangered species, but some populations are becoming scarce due to deforestation and being captured for the pet trade. So in the last paragraph, or the conclusion, they've given us an interesting piece of information, the Indigenous people, which is verifiable, therefore it is a fact, and they've talked about whether the species is endangered or not, and why it's endangered or not. And then finally, you can see they've written source, Toucan, National Geographic Online, and use the correct GAC guided reference structure. You can see they've got accessed January 27, 2015. So again, have a look at this. This is a perfect example of what your description should be looking like, what the tone of voice is. You can see that they haven't used I, they haven't really used any emotional language. It's professional, scientific. As I said, don't forget your references. This is just a quick little thing that you can get an extra mark for. You have it on your data sheet. You just need to make sure that you keep it at the end. Again, make sure that you follow this exact structure. This is the same structure that you're going to be using throughout GAC, so you must learn it. So on Wednesday, bring your endangered animal data sheet. You cannot bring your plan, only your data sheet. That is it. Have 2 pens and your correction tape. Your desk is to be clear of everything else. No books, no phones, no dictionaries, and no plans. You have 1 hour to complete the test. Please complete the plan first. As I said, you'll get marked on that. Write your description, and then, most importantly, read and edit, read and edit. You should read at least twice. So reading and editing twice. I also suggest that you read quietly under your breath, just so you can actually hear whether the sentence structure is correct. Think, have I put everything in a logical order? If you want to move one paragraph somewhere else, it's absolutely fine for you to circle that paragraph and then draw an arrow so that I can see that you've moved it. If you forgot to do your introduction, you can write that at the end, write introduction and draw an arrow to the top so I know that is there. That's absolutely fine. Have you included all of the information? Some people, even though it was on the data sheet, didn't actually include the breeding habits of the panda, or they may not have included the information about it being endangered. It's important that you include all of the information. Use good linking devices, signposting phrases, defining and non-defining clauses. So have you linked your sentences? Have you checked your spelling, including simple things like using a capital letter, making sure that you're using a full stop or a comma where you need to? Your sentence structure, your grammar, and your vocabulary. And finally, included the reference at the end. There is no reason for you not to actually complete this and be able to tick each of these boxes. So that's pretty much all I need to tell you. The last thing is, I wish you the very best of luck on Wednesday when you complete this. If you've got any questions in the meantime, or would you like to send an updated version of the panda description, please do so. At the end of the assessment, you need to hand in all of the paperwork. So I need your data sheet, as well as your full description, as well as your plan. So all of those documents must be handed into the teacher before you leave the room. Thanks very much. Again, feel free to get in contact with me if there's anything that I can help with.